Hi, I'm Lainey Menard. Going into camp, I was struggling a lot with anxiety. It's always been a really big battle for me, and I wanted to be free from it, but I wasn't sure how. I knew that there was freedom in Christ, but I wasn't sure how to walk that out. So at camp, I was having panic attacks a couple times a day for the first few days. I went to evening prayer one night and I started to have one, and so I left the room for a few minutes to calm myself down. I was unable to calm myself down, but I knew I needed to be in there, so I went back in. As soon as I went in, we were told to pair up in groups to start praying. I immediately thought of a friend that had walked alongside me and I battled with anxiety, and so I wanted to go to her because I felt like I needed prayer. She was all the way across the room, and so I was unable to get to her in time, and instead I was paired with a few girls a little bit younger than me. When I asked them what they needed prayer for, they answered anxiety and anxious thoughts, exactly what I had been dealing with. As I started to pray over them, I was reminded of God's promises. When we sat down, Pastor Drew said the best way to humble yourself is to serve others. So through this hard situation I was facing, God was speaking into other people's lives. Since I got back from camp, I haven't had any anxiety attacks, and anytime anxious thoughts have came into my mind, I was reminded of God's promises.
Hi, my name is Ava Sanderson. So before camp, I would say I was having a hard time keeping myself in good moods. Everything was kind of just putting me down, and when I got to camp, it was kind of the same thing. Everything was just kind of setting me off, and I was getting frustrated with a lot of people even though they weren't really doing anything. And that kind of continued until I think Thursday night. We were having prayer time, and I knew I needed to go up, and I went up and I talked to Lindy, and I was telling her some things, and she told me that I needed to go to God with everything, and I needed to tell God what was going on. And I prayed harder than I've ever prayed that night, and I got freedom from so much guilt and so much shame that I was carrying around. So now coming back from camp, I feel like it's a lot easier for me to go to God about everything, and I feel like it's 10 times easier for me to talk to Him about things where I was struggling before.
Hi, I'm Mason McKay. My biggest testimony from camp, it wasn't really, I wouldn't call it a testimony. I would call it more of a, hey, let's bring the youth group together and let's connect, let's be involved, be open to welcoming people, not so many just like groups of people, just loving everybody and just making it a second home. And with games, creating games, having ideas. If you have an idea, just tell Drew, go say something, you know. This is supposed to be fun and learning about God, so you just add them together, and that's how I think our youth group should be.
Hi, I'm Bryn Higginbotham. Before camp, I was really struggling with letting things go and just going, not experiencing what I needed to outside of church and not carrying my faith outside of church. So going into camp, I was really focusing on the same thing that happened to me last year. I was expecting the same thing, like He was gonna work in me the same way that He did last year. Quickly, I realized that's not what He had in plan for me at camp. He had in plan that I wasn't just supposed to be expecting stuff to happen to me at camp. I'm supposed to be expecting it at any time of the day, at anywhere. And I really needed to focus more on His word and using it to help others around me. So the big question that I got out of that was just why are you focusing on a big change just during camp? And I couldn't give a direct answer to that because I wasn't doing that. I was always thinking, oh, church camp is the week that there's gonna be something big that's gonna change in my life, when really it can happen anytime. So with that, I realized that I need to surround myself with friends that will build me up with that instead of tear me down and take me further away from God. If I want people to look at me and say confidently that they know my religion and what I believe in, then I need to pursue it.
Hi, my name is Isabel McCann. So before camp, I went to the doctor with stomach pain, and they told me that I had an 8-centimeter cyst on my ovary. And for reference, your ovary is about the size of an almond, 2 centimeters to 3 centimeters. And so it was a pretty big deal, and they had told me that it was pretty close to rupturing. And the doctor had said no physical activity until it either ruptures or I have surgery to get it out. And this was like a couple days before we were supposed to leave for camp. So my parents were really conflicted on what we were gonna do, if I was gonna go to camp. But I just felt like I should go to camp, and I knew that I was gonna be healed there. And so eventually I convinced them to say yes, and they were still freaked out about it and everything. And I left for camp, and I wasn't able to play the games or anything, but I could still go to the services. So throughout the week, I was just being prayed over, and I was asking God for healing and worshiping, and it was just really good. We were having a really fun time. And then Wednesday night, Pastor Kyle called up anybody who came to camp that needed physical healing. And so I went up and I got prayed for. Pastor Kyle prayed for me, Pastor Drew, like all the leaders prayed for me. And Drew just told me to lift my hands, and after his prayer said, I believe it, I receive it. And I did that. And then I just carried that with me all through that night, through the rest of the week, through to my doctor's appointment. And that night we were sitting in our room, and a couple of the counselors were in there, and I knew I was healed. I felt it. I could like feel that it just disappeared, because I could feel a bump there, and there was no bump anymore after that. And then we all just sat there and thanked Jesus. It was a really good moment. And then the rest of the camp went on, and then after camp, a couple days after, I had to go for another appointment. And they said they needed new ultrasound pictures because they couldn't see the first ones as clearly, which didn't really make sense because they already saw the pictures and pretty much told me what was gonna happen. So whatever, we went in. My mom agreed because she was like Jesus. And they told me there was no trace of an 8-centimeter cyst. All they found were 2 little follicles that would pretty much turn into nothing. So that was really cool. And the Thursday night at camp, I asked one of the counselors to pray for me so I could like go and share out my testimony and tell other people what happened to me. And so they had hope that it could happen for them. And this is the second time I've shared it, so that's pretty cool. And I've had people come up to me, my mom posted about it on Facebook, and tell me that it was a really cool story and ask me to pray for them and things like that.
Thank you so much for supporting Fuzion Youth.
Thank you all for supporting Fuzion Youth.
Thank you for supporting Fuzion Youth.
Thank you for supporting Fuzion Youth.
Thank you for supporting Fuzion Youth.